Yikes. In her latest disastrous White House press briefing, Trump Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt was visibly triggered into a total meltdown, lashing out at reporters and at times hitting the lectern as she was forced to address a string of high-profile scandals and legal defeats suffered by her boss. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got several clips to talk about, a lot of topics, a lot of bad news for the Trump administration and good news for Americans as a result. And Karoline Leavitt's not happy. Just a random example of her hitting the lectern because she's so pissed off about federal judges ruling against her boss.
Federal judge blocked the Trump administration from defunding the Department of Education, another signature campaign promise that this president has the power to implement. Courts ordered the Trump administration could not eliminate funding for illegal DEI programs, hence the word illegal. These are illegal programs to begin with, and now the courts are trying to say this president can't roll them back. And a district federal judge.
Did you hear that? I mean, she's hitting the lectern because she's so pissed. She's so pissed that this judiciary, many of which, by the way, many of these judges, conservative, okay, are pushing back on her boss for his obvious illegal behavior, unconstitutional behavior in some instances. So another example of Leavitt, again, out of breath, triggered, hitting the lectern, this time getting pissed at a question about the Qatari jet that Trump was gifted. And we actually have confirmation that because Trump said, well, they offered it to me. No, we have confirmation courtesy of the Washington Post from people in the Qatari government that Trump asked for the jet. It was not gifted to him. They did not go to Trump. Trump went to them, okay? Karoline Leavitt is triggered by any questions related to the Qatari jet.
Thanks, Caroline.
Sure.
I wanted to just clarify once and for all the Qatari jet, the sale, or the gift, because the Qatari government is asking the U.S. to clarify that the jet's pending transfer was initiated by the Trump administration. So is this something that the White House is going to do?
The amount of questions we've received, and we've been incredibly clear, and I have answered this, the president has answered this, the Department of Defense has answered this. This is a government-to-government gift transfer from the Qataris to the Department of Defense, to the United States Air Force. It is now in their hands, and for further details on where that stands, I would defer you to the Department of Defense and the United States Air Force. I have nothing more for you on that. Deanna.
Thanks, Caroline.
She's pissed because this is not polling well for Trump at all. So again, Trump and Karoline Leavitt, they all got busted in a lie. The Qatari government wants clarification, like, hey, we didn't offer this, so you asked us for this, number one. And number two, it's seen as an extraordinary act of corruption, which it is, and Trump plans to take the jet with him once he leaves office, after forcing the American people to pay millions, hundreds of millions, potentially billions of dollars in the necessary, legally required security upgrades to this Air Force One, this new potential Air Force One, as we also pay untold amounts of money for 2 new additional Air Force Ones courtesy of Boeing. So this is like 2xing the taxpayer burden on paying for Air Force One when Trump has a perfectly good one, a perfectly secure one in his possession right now, the current Air Force One. It's just, that's why she's so pissed off about this. Also bad news is Peter Doocy of Fox News pressed Karoline Leavitt about the recent court ruling striking down most of Trump's tariffs. He has a really good question that she has a really shitty answer for.
So the courts are basically telling you guys they think that the White House's policies, the president's policies, are in some way against the law. So why can't President Trump ask the Republicans that control the House and the Republicans that control the Senate just to make a new law?
Well, these laws have already been granted to the president by the Constitution and by laws that have been previously passed. I'll give you another example. For instance, we've been blocked in court for the revocation of visas from individuals who have the privilege of studying in the United States of America. Secretary of State Rubio has simply used his authority to revoke those visas, to revoke that privilege, and we've seen the courts try to block that. So if these judges want to be the Secretary of State or they want to be the president, they can run for office themselves. It should be the other way around. But all of the actions the president has taken rely on legal authorities that have already been granted to him.
Not according to the branch responsible for determining whether or not you're following the law. Peter Doocy's point is well taken. Your cult leader, your boss, his party controls both chambers of Congress, and there's a 6-3 conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court. It seems at least perfectly reasonable to conclude that you guys could just draft a very explicit law saying, I mean, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, President Donald Trump can do whatever the fuck he wants with respect to this, this, and this. Be a terrible law, but you have the numbers, at least in theory, assuming that your idea is popular and is supported by Republican lawmakers, which of course that indeed begs the question, why not just do it? Well, his authorities are already derived from law, not according to the judges adjudicating these matters. So why not just create the law explicitly? You have avenues available to do these sorts of unhinged, terrible things. This idea that, well, Marco Rubio's getting blocked for, deporting people. Yeah, because on two grounds. Number one, the notion that he's violating due process. Number two, that he's violating people's First Amendment rights. And yes, First Amendment protections are extended to visa holders in this country. It's not just American citizens. The Constitution is very explicit about persons versus citizen. They use both terms when and where applicable. People in this country, visitors, foreigners, immigrants, migrants, green card holders, they have First Amendment rights that no Secretary of State is at liberty to violate. And that's what she just refuses to get. So now we're going to rewind the clock back a little bit to the very beginning. So this is Karoline Leavitt coming out and complaining about some of these recent high-profile defeats, including the one that overturned Trump's tariffs.
Last night, the Trump administration faced another example of judicial overreach. Using his full and proper legal authority, President Trump imposed universal tariffs and reciprocal tariffs on Liberation Day to address the extraordinary threat to our national security and economy posed by large and persistent annual U.S. goods trade deficits. The United States has run a trade deficit of goods every year since 1975. In 2024, our trade deficit in goods exceeded $1 trillion. Everybody agrees this is unacceptable. President Trump is delivering on his promise to fix this problem, and he has taken a long overdue and much needed bold stance for American workers after decades of our manufacturing base being hollowed out. The president's rationale for imposing these powerful tariffs was legally sound and grounded in common sense. President Trump correctly believes that America cannot function safely long-term if we are unable to scale advanced domestic manufacturing capacity, have our own secure critical supply chains, and our defense industrial base is dependent on foreign adversaries. 3 judges of the U.S. Court of International Trade disagreed and brazenly abused their judicial power to usurp the authority of President Trump to stop him from carrying out the mandate that the American people gave him. These judges failed to acknowledge that the President of the United States has core foreign affairs powers and authority given to him by Congress to protect the United States economy and national security. Congress had created the National Emergency Act to provide the congressional framework to strike down improper IEEPA use. And any questions over whether President Trump improperly imposed these IEEPA tariffs were already adjudicated in Congress following Liberation Day.
So, she's not very happy about it. She's out of breath. She's so angry about it. But the fact of the matter is that one of those judges on that 3-judge panel was a Trump appointee who used to work in the first Trump term for Trump's U.S. trade representative. So, again, these are not liberal activist judges. These are judges, 2 of them, 2 of the 3 conservative, who felt that Donald Trump just honestly behaved in an unconstitutional way, and they present their arguments accordingly. And again, Trump has the ability to appeal, and he has a 6-3 conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court, which may indeed rule favorably for him. But again, not seeing what the real issue is, other than that they're just authoritarians who want the executive to have total control, and they just don't like any opposition to that notion. Here's another clip.
For example, just before Congress enacted the original Trump tax cuts at the end of
Chump. That was fun. Chump tax plan. He is a chump and an idiot, a moron. Let's see. Then, of course, Karoline Leavitt tries to take on the increasingly mounting criticisms of Trump's one big beautiful bill and lies her ass off.
I also want to take the opportunity to debunk some false claims that have been circulating in the press about this bill. The blatantly wrong claim that the one big beautiful bill increases the deficit is based on the Congressional Budget Office and other scorekeepers who use shoddy assumptions and have historically been terrible at forecasting across Democrat and Republican administrations alike. For example, just before Congress enacted the original Trump tax cuts at the end of 2017, the same CBO projected that growth would average a mere 1.9% over the next 10 years. However, by 2019, actual growth had surged to 3.4% once the Trump tax cuts went into effect, exceeding the CBO forecast by nearly 2 full percentage points.
So the CBO is a nonpartisan group that bases its estimates on nonpartisan data. They've worked under Republican and Democratic administrations, under Republican and Democratic Congresses, and Republicans under the Biden administration repeatedly cited the CBO. So again, they're cherry picking it for convenience, but according to the CBO and at least 4 other nonpartisan analyses, this big, beautiful bill is devastating for both the deficit and in the debt in the long term. Fiscally irresponsible, which is why Thomas Massie opposes it, which is why so many Republicans who ultimately bent the knee out of fear to Trump, like Chip Roy, opposed it, but also it's facing stiff opposition from Rick Scott in the Senate, from Josh Hawley in the Senate, from Ron Johnson in the Senate, from Rand Paul in the Senate, and from others as well. These conservatives, who are also Republican, have serious issue with the sort of things, sort of lies that Karoline Leavitt is putting out. Here's another clip.
And on tariffs, Kevin Hassett earlier this morning, he brushed off, I believe, legal ruling, called it a hiccup, and he said that trade deal negotiations would continue. Why would other countries continue these trade deal negotiations given the ruling?
Because other countries around the world have faith in the negotiator-in-chief, President Donald J. Trump. And they also probably see how ridiculous this ruling is, and they understand that the administration is going to win, and we intend to win. We already filed an emergency appeal. We expect to fight this battle all the way to the Supreme Court. These other countries should also know, and they do know, that the president reserves other tariff authorities, Section 232, for example, to ensure that America's interests are being restored around the world. But I can confirm that our ambassador for trade, Jamison Greer, already heard from countries around the world this morning who said they intend to continue with these negotiations.
They say a lot of things. We have no reason to take any of it at face value. But again, it's a good point that's been made by others. We discussed in our previous video about the tariff ruling, which is that this is a blow to the leverage that Trump attempts to have in his exhortation of other countries. Now, it's also true. I mean, Karoline Leavitt did say one true thing there, which is that, you know, this ruling doesn't totally eliminate Trump's ability to impose tariffs, because that 3-judge panel did preserve Trump's Section 232 authority. So Trump still, in a much more targeted fashion, can impose tariffs on other countries. But right now, the major source of the authority for the sweeping global tariffs has been neutered. But who knows? They may prevail upon appeal.
They were just on The View last week. She was saying everything is fine. She's still lying to the American people. She still thinks the American public are so stupid that they're going to believe her lies. And frankly, it's insulting, and she needs to answer for it. Ouija.
So that was in response to a question about whether Republicans are going to try to question former First Lady Jill Biden about President Biden's mental state. Karoline Leavitt, you know, again, totally abandoning the brief, like half-assed moment of empathy after President Biden's cancer diagnosis, to say that Jill Biden, you know, should indeed have to answer for her posturing or her positions or her lies or her comments, however you want to frame it, about her husband's mental health. All I will say is, as I've said before, like, you know, if Republicans want to use their political capital to investigate President Biden, there's nothing that Democrats can do about that. Biden, of course, is not a political threat because he's not only suffering a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, but he's also not running for re-election. I mean, he's in his 80s, right? And right now, every elected Democrat in the country is not a big fan of Joe Biden. But set that aside. What it will also do is create a greater permission structure for if and when the time comes that Democrats ever retake power after a Trump administration, to haul members of the Trump family or Trump administration in and question them as well about all sorts of things. So I see it ultimately as a win-win, no matter what. I think it's ridiculous that this is what Republicans are vesting their time on. But if they want to do it, then again, there's nothing that Democrats can do about it. And we just have to make sure that we use it as a precedent to use against Trump and the Republicans when we take power as well. One more clip.
Analysis that growth will average 3% in the long run after the One Big Beautiful Bill is passed, which is nearly double the ridiculous CBO projection. This higher growth would result in $4.1 trillion in additional revenue over the next 10 years. Between the common sense spending reforms contained in the One Big Beautiful Bill and the robust economic growth that will be generated as a result of it, there will be no increase to the deficit. The same analysis from the CEA shows just how this historic package will
So again, just more lies about Trump's one big beautiful bill. Oh, I said I was going to have one more clip, but actually there are two more. No, there's one more. Let me do this. One more clip, but again, just to really put a fine point on it, this bill and its fiscal irresponsibility is being called out by members of this lady's own party. So again, she has no credibility on this, to say nothing of 4 to 5 nonpartisan analyses on the matter. This one's kind of interesting, though, because, again, you want to talk about facts and citations and, proper scorekeeping and proper evidence for claims. The Trump administration also got busted for this awkwardly.
Thanks so much, Karoline. A notice investigation found that the Hallmark Maha Commission report that was released last week cites studies that appear to not exist. We know that because, in part, we reached out to some of the listed authors who said that they didn't write the studies cited. So I want to ask, does the White House have confidence that the information coming from HHS can be trusted?
Yes, we have complete confidence in Secretary Kennedy and his team at HHS. I understand there were some formatting issues with the Maha report that are being addressed, and the report will be updated, but it does not negate the substance of the report, which, as you know, is one of the most transformative health reports that has ever been released by the federal government, and is backed on good science that has never been recognized by the federal government.
And a quick follow-up, can you talk about what tools or research goes into production of these kinds of reports? For instance, is it AI that's used to put together these reports now?
I can't speak to that. I would defer you to the Department of Health and Human Services. What I know is just what I know is just the lies you told. Yeah. So again, this idea that the Trump administration, by way of the Health and Human Services Department, is actually releasing, claims based on bullshit studies. The authors of these alleged studies saying we never wrote anything like that. That's hilarious. And again, just further demonstration of the Trump administration and the Republican Party's unprecedented, unparalleled perfidy, their dishonesty. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.